Hi, I'm Tom Stevenson, and welcome to Project Management Tips number 56. I'm a professor of construction management, and if you're new to the channel or to this space, I have a lot of videos that I've developed based on construction, different areas of construction. I basically started my career in the trades, in carpentry and brick and stone masonry, and kind of did things a little backwards over the years. Did business degrees and MBAs and kind of learned the business side. And I've been working as a professor for quite a number of years while consulting and working with industries, very, very large companies in the construction sector. And this time of year, it's kind of like where a lot of people are graduating from various programs in colleges and universities around the world, and maybe they've taken construction management degrees, diplomas, one-year programs, whatever that may be, or maybe they're in apprenticeships and they're finishing up their last sort of in-school training. They're ready to write their apprenticeship licensing qualifications, or perhaps you've kind of worked it from the ground up. Wherever you are at, I think this video here will give you a little bit of sort of perspective and direction and some things to think about as you move forward in your career, or if you're thinking of going down this path for a career in construction. All right, it'll give you kind of an overview and ways of thinking about things. Okay, that's what I'm trying to get across in this. I have a multitude of different videos on the very specifics of different aspects of construction. If you want to check out my playlists, you can do that. But let's get moving. All right, so as I mentioned, apprenticeship, diplomas, degrees, work your way up, right? So work your way up simply means, maybe you couldn't afford to do all these different things and you just had to start somewhere, or you want to start somewhere. And so that might be where you start out as a laborer in construction, or you get some fairly low-level administrative job in construction. And you can go pretty much anywhere you want if you have the aptitude, interest, discipline, and motivation to do it. I think about construction projects. The people that lead construction projects are project managers and site superintendents. And if you've kind of started out in these areas, or you've been training in these areas, this is a little bit of a review for you, but you're kind of in the middle here under that project team area where you have a PM, a site super leading those projects. It might be where you want to move to. You might be in an apprenticeship for a specific trade. You'll see there's different spokes on this wheel that fit. Client, you've got to learn to interact and deal with clients in a very effective way. So whatever technical training you've had, you also have to build on the soft skills, which will come up on the next slide. Suppliers, vendors. We're through a pandemic the last few years, looking in the rear view mirror, but that really exposed some real issues we had in the supply chain, and you got to really learn how to navigate those things. And again, I don't care if you're a plumber, I don't care if you're a project manager, whatever you've graduated from, these are things that are going to affect what you do. Then if you're in a big company, you're going to be managing people. So if you get into these leadership positions, and if you, from an apprenticeship, you become a foreperson, you're going to have to deal with different people and manage different people from that perspective. And we've got the trades. This little bubble here is like 40 different bubbles on larger project because there's all these different trades and specializations that you've got to learn to interact with, coordinate, schedule, really sort of understand what it is that they need so you can facilitate the flow for them. All of the regulatory authorities. Think of all the regulatory authorities that each subtrade deals with, and then think about it on a project level that you've got to deal with. A lot there, right? Authorities having jurisdiction, AHJ. Consultants, who's the main project consultant, right? Looking after this. A lot of interactions here going. You might have basically at certain points, you're the customer, they're the customer. Well, who wants what? Who needs what from whom? And being able to communicate that and work that. A lot to that. This is not simple stuff here. All of their consultants, and you've got your structural engineer, mechanical engineer, your geotechnical engineer, your electrical engineer. A lot of specializations. We even have specialty engineers up here that I put. Very big companies, you've got different departments. You got to learn how to navigate that. And there might be in a very big company a lot of people that can help you, but you've got to learn how that navigates through that process. And so this whole video is sort of looking at all the different high level sort of thinking things and low level that come into the play in developing a career, a success, a mindset for success. Test and commissioning agent. Client basically needs to know that whatever is being built actually meets the requirements it was designed for. So that's the test and commissioning agent that comes into play there. Third party. GC's upper management. Well, sometimes you need some support. Sometimes this subcontractor is giving you a hard time. It's probably their site super or their foreperson on your project. And if that's happening, you can't resolve it. Talking to senior management can talk to their senior management. And guess what? Things happen. Things happen all of a sudden because whoever this subcontractor is, basically, they get a lot of business from you, the GC. And they want to keep getting that business. And so if the owner talks to this owner, all of a sudden things happen. I've experienced that on construction projects. More recently, a few years back, I had where I was trying to coordinate alignment of all our construction programs in our province here. It'd be like doing it in your state or whatever it is, wherever you are in the world. And one of the colleges just was non-responsive. The contact person was non-responsive. Fortunately, I knew who their boss was, and I'd built a relationship over time. It's about relationships. And I called their boss. His name was Claude. And I said, Claude, I'm having a problem. I've sent these 12 emails. I've left these 4 voicemails. Nothing. He said, oh, let me take care of it for you. Hung up the phone 5 minutes later, that person was on the phone. What do you need? Whatever you need, this is on my top priority, right? So sometimes it's who you know and the relationships that you've built in this circle, this spoke wheel of contacts and relationships. The general public. Your project may be interfering with the flow of traffic. It may be interfering with sidewalks. You may have to protect students that are in a facility that you are working in. So safety, all of these things. How are basically the parking in the area? Is that affecting the neighborhood? There's a lot of things. You don't want zoning problems and bylaw officers coming to want to fine you or shut your project down. So you've got to build those relationships. And of course, all the specialty consultants that may fall outside basically the typical engineers. Maybe you've got a specialty envelope consultant. Maybe you've got a specialty environmental consultant because you're going for a specific certification program on this particular project. So these are things that no matter where you're at, you have to learn how to interact with them. And it requires a mixture of technical and soft skills. Technical, you want to learn Microsoft Project, you want to learn how to develop a schedule, watch my videos on that. Definitely technical, but not so much on the soft skills. You want to learn the soft skills, look at more of the videos on the project management side and some of the interactions that tie with the technical side. Look, I know a lot of people that are really good on the technical, but they're not very good on the soft. It's going to limit you in your career if you're limited in the soft. Learn the soft. Get better at the soft. Get better at building relationships. Get better at communicating. Get better at solving problems in a engaging, collaborative way, if that's where your weakness is. On the other hand, I know people that are really good at talking, but they're not so good at doing stuff. And so it's one thing to say things, it's another thing to do things. So if you can't execute, you can talk all you want in construction, but people will figure that out. You've got to learn the technical stuff. With that said, you will not learn everything. I know this much about construction. It's a big area, as you'll see. You have to build both of them up over time. It's one of those investments. So if you're graduating from an apprenticeship program, if you're from a degree program, diploma program, if you're doing it the hard knocks way of day by day trying to better yourself, starting as a laborer and work your way up, you've got to work on these. You got to work on both of them. But you know what? They compound like money does over time. That base compounds. And I think about our construction projects. This is the project team. And if you watch my other videos, you get a better sense of this. And I've done this before, so I'm not going to spend so much time on this, but this is the project team in the middle. This is the flow of your construction projects. Each one of these is very important. Each one of them carries significance. Your job is to manage these effectively. You require a lot of those soft skills in negotiation, sales, understanding your purpose, your mission, getting people engaged, leadership, communication, vision, and there's a whole pile of areas that we can improve upon here. But basically looking forward, basically doing the right things. Ethics, I want people that are getting into our industry to carry the highest standards of ethics, and I think you can stand out from the crowd. You can put yourself in that top 20%, that Pareto 20%, that basically will lead the industry with the most influence, the 80%. And of course, with each one of these, we've got all of these things, these skill sets. Now, if you're going through and you're graduating from any of these programs, starting your career, you learn this through education. If you're doing the hard knocks, some of these things you've seen, you know, you may not know them all. You can work at bettering yourself in those areas, right? But really, we've got to plan things out well because we've got to have something to base and measure against. And so that's where pre-construction is, to develop, flush out those plans. But no, in construction, it's going to change. Nothing ever goes exactly the way it's planned. Right? And so as we flow into construction and we're executing on the plan, we're going to have to do updates. We're going to have to do recoveries. We're going to have to do adjustments. We're going to have to, in pre-construction, be planning out for closeout. Even though that's a long way away, we've got to plan that so that we can execute on that so that we can close out really effectively. So it's really sort of this linear kind of stream that we're going down construction, and we don't want to be going back too much. Rework, have waste in it. We want to try to mitigate as much. We want to try to eliminate as much before it happens and learn as much. Learning, you're not done learning ever. If you think you are, it's lost. You have to have an open mind. You have to have a growth mindset, as Carol Dweck would say, not a fixed mindset about learning. And if we do this well, you know what? If we finish as we go, we finish as we go. We fix as we go. If something is not quite right, we fix it then. We don't leave stuff to pile up towards the end where we've got all of these things left to do. We want to get this to be a smooth flow. We want to remove the rocks, as we talk about in lean manufacturing and lean construction. It's all about flow. It's all about trying to mitigate and remove the obstacles. And the more that we learn about that ahead of time, the better we build these relationships up, the more collaborative it'll be, the fewer the rocks there'll be to remove that we've hit. We can avoid them. We can basically get them taken out of the way beforehand. So, of course, you know, this is like, first of all, we got to get the project. So there's stuff that comes before here. I'm not getting into that right now, but that's the pursuit. And then, of course, there's all the warranty issues and things that come after that, right? So the construction industry, this path or career that you're setting forth for yourself, it's a big industry. I think of it like the universe, and it's always expanding. It's always getting bigger. If you think you know everything, you don't. There's a lot of sectors to this industry. There's renovation, there's restoration, there's civil infrastructure, there's high-rise residential, there's low-rise residential, there's ICI, right? ICI is institutional, commercial, industrial projects. So you can see a lot of specialties. There's no way anybody knows everything. No way. And if you did, even at this moment, it's changed because the industry is changing. Things are changing. So you have to continuously grow. You have to continuously learn. And when we think about what you know now starting off in your career, and that's being very generous, the size of the dot. What you know after many years of experience, I think that's being generous, the size of the dot. And what your company knows, I don't care if it's the biggest company in the world, it's not going to know everything. And so whatever sector you're working in, right, there are these areas that you don't know. You don't know. And we call those knowledge gaps, right? But what you have to do is become very effective at filling those gaps. And what I've said to my students, you know, when I graduated, in different programs, whether it's apprenticeship or the various degrees, it wasn't so well. Maybe the second degree, the MBA, there was the internet, and there was that you could find things pretty good on the internet. But there wasn't like when I did apprenticeship and I basically did my business undergraduate. There wasn't like if you needed to find something, you had to go to a library, you had to find it, and it basically took time. And usually the books that you were looking at were quite dated. Now you can get stuff very quick, and with the way AI is integrating with things, you can ask questions, you can get pretty good answers, which are getting better, pretty much by the week and by the month. So there's no excuse for you not to be able to fill those knowledge gaps. Building relationships is a really good way. I was saying to my students today, on the weekend, we're looking at a new car, and I was at the dealership, and it's a hybrid. And they were talking about this level 2 for basically the plug-in, and I wasn't sure exactly what the level 2 was. And I was just thinking in my head, it was just basically a 220, and wasn't exactly sure. So I'm texting my electrician, basically going back and forth on what I got to set up and what it means and what are the different choices. Very helpful to be able to do that. Very helpful to have that relationship. Now, I could have easily Googled it and that, but I know this electrician does the install. I know he's going to be able to quickly talk about, how much work it is. And he knows my particular house because he's done work there before, and I've used him on other projects and different things. So very helpful when you've got that. That's what you want to build, those relationships. I was also saying, I remember when I was acting director at our college, I had an assistant, and she had worked in basically HR. She had worked in scheduling. She had worked in registration. It was great. As soon as I had a problem with, I'll talk to Joanne. I'll talk to Ted. I'll talk to Fred. Right? Knew everybody in the different departments. So easy that way. That takes time. That takes effort. That's the soft skills of construction, tied with the technical side of things. So if you're a plumber, the more you understand about code requirements, about installation, about new tools, new products, especially in the world of piping systems and things like that, the better. But also being able to talk to your vendor and be able to get that delivery made when you need it. Right? Those are all the negotiation, the soft skills, building on those things, right? So knowledge skills in our industry, that's important. Building on those skills, very important. Now I'm just going to switch because I just wanted to go over something fairly quickly. Okay, I'm here at the Farnham Street blog. This is basically an excellent blog put on by Shane Parrish, and he's done this sort of takeoff that really this blog and Farnham Street, they have an excellent podcast as well, and it really teaches you a lot about tools, techniques, mental models. I've even developed my own art of construction course at the Construction Institute of Canada.ca that I do online, and it really is about tools, techniques, mental models. This article here, I think, really resonates with people. So it says the 2 types of knowledge, the Max Planck chauffeur test. So if you're in construction, I think this should resonate with you too. So Charlie Munger, who's just recently passed away, it's close to 100, the business partner of Warren Buffett, used to tell this story. And basically, he used it to distinguish between the 2 types of knowledge, real knowledge and pretend knowledge. So think about construction here. At the 2007 commencement, that's why I'm talking about degrees, diploma, apprenticeship, working the hard way, I frequently tell the apocryphal story. I always have trouble pronouncing that word, which means fictional. So it's not exactly true, but you can see how it would be true. Story about how Max Planck, after he won the Nobel Prize, went about around Germany giving the same standard lecture on the new quantum mechanics. Max Planck was kind of Einstein's mentor. They were good friends. If you look at the Netflix show on Einstein, very good. I recommend it. Basically, he was a Nobel laureate, and so you could see that after he wins the Nobel Prize, he would go around giving these lectures. Fictional. Over time, his chauffeur memorized the lecture and said, "Would you mind, Professor Planck, because it's so boring to stay in our routine, if I gave the lecture in Munich and you just sat in the front wearing my chauffeur's hat? Planck said, well, why not? And the chauffeur got up and gave this long lecture on quantum mechanics, after which a physics professor stood up and asked a perfectly ghastly question to the chauffeur, who's pretending he's Max Planck. Back then, in the early 1900s, your picture wasn't everywhere you could do things. Maybe your name was, but your picture, people wouldn't recognize you. The speaker said, well, I'm surprised. Basically, the person stood up in the audience and said, the physics professor stood up and said a ghastly question, very complicated. The speaker said, well, I'm surprised that in an advanced city like Munich, I get such an elementary question. The speaker, of course, is the chauffeur that's pretending to be Max Planck. And he goes, I'm going to ask my chauffeur to answer this elementary question. In other words, now he couldn't answer it. He's got to get Max Planck to answer it. So this is really, as Richard Feynman pointed out, right? This really is, it's about making a distinction between knowing the name of something and knowing something. It's one thing to know the name of something. It's one thing to know the words in the speech. It's another thing to know what it is, right? And in construction, that's a big deal. In construction, you want somebody that knows something, that really can do something, right? I'm not so worried that my plumber maybe misspelled the name of a part, but I am concerned if they don't know how to solder that connection or fit that connection with all the different technologies that we have today. That's what I want. That's what I need, right? In construction, we need people that know something. Now, if you're starting out, so this is the other thing, I had a good question from one of my students. I'm feeling imposter syndrome. Like, I know the names of some things, but I don't feel confident yet that I know something. Well, you know what? It takes time to know something. It takes hard work to know something. It takes a lot of ongoing in the trenches kind of work, but with a mindset of learning and getting better, continuous improvement. There are a lot of people, they go start their careers and then they kind of plateau after 3-4 years. People do their apprenticeship, they get their trade license, and then they kind of coast. You want to get better at things. You want to have this thirst for learning that makes it so much more enjoyable, the whole process, and it will serve you well in your careers in construction. It's that 20-80. If you can get yourself in that top 20%, that top 30% in the industry, in construction, you know what? Your companies can go bankrupt. The economy can go down. You can survive it. You can thrive coming out of it if you have those skill sets. And the nice thing is, most people aren't watching a video like you are right now trying to think about these things and improve themselves. So by doing that, you're setting yourself on the right course to improve in your careers. So I just want to close out with this video, The Man in the Arena. I was at a client's place recently. I loved that they had in the office, I took a picture of it. They had all these really sort of inspiring sort of posters and artwork and different things like that. And so this is a picture of it, right? This was Fitzrovia, big developer in Toronto, Man in the Arena, right? And I was very familiar with it because I've used this with graduating classes for a number of years. But I really like that, here it is in a big developer. This is sort of the take. And this is kind of the message from Theodore Roosevelt, depending on how you want to pronounce it, who was a very dynamic president in the early 1900s in the United States. And so after his presidency, he was giving this speech in Paris. And this is a clip from it. You can get the whole speech online, but this is really where it gets down to the nitty-gritty. It is not the critic who counts, not the man. And of course, it was written in the early 1900s, so it uses the word man a lot. Not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust, sweat, and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes up short again and again, makes mistakes, because there's no effort without error or shortcoming. You got to stretch yourself. But who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself for a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold, timid souls who knew neither victory nor defeat. In the construction industry, it's a tough industry, but it's a great industry. I mean, you're building homes for people. You're building transportation systems for people. You're building condominium structures that are holding thousands of people. You're building treatment plants for water and sewage so that basically we have a healthy society. You're building hospitals to save lives. You can go on in schools so you can be educated in. Where would we be without construction? So this is a fantastic career path that you're going down. But don't, as Teddy Roosevelt said, don't be shy. Don't be afraid to try things. Don't be afraid to be yourself, and don't be afraid to fail, right? It's going to take time. It's going to take effort. But if you stay at it, you're going to be really successful. So I'm Tom Stevenson, wishing you the best on your path. If you like this video and you like other videos, click the subscribe button, leave a comment, things that you've experienced in your career. I've really liked recently, as this channel gets bigger and bigger and now it's in the millions of views, I've really liked recently that people are even keeping a dialogue with themselves. If I can't get to answer all the questions, you're sometimes replying and answering in a very helpful way to others. And that's how we grow as an individual. That's how we grow as a community. And that's how we grow as a community, as an industry. So again, I wish you all the best, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.